Yes, hello, this is Danhausen here, very nice for evil, and you are listening to Bob After Dark. Subscribe or be cursed.
From Mothman and Nessie to the spirit that haunts your home, welcome to Bob After Dark, a podcast about legends, lore, and the supernatural. So turn your lights down and your volume up and enjoy your trip to the shadows.
Hey there, children of the night, and welcome to Bob After Dark, the show that takes you into the shadows and goes and says hello, everything that goes bump in the night. I'm your host with the most that enjoys Toast Bob, and alongside of me, as always, is my ever wonderful, ever vampiric, ever cape-wearing, and forever the heartthrob of Bob After Dark, my friend, my producer, my brother, the 2024 version of Jonathan Taylor Thomas as a vampire on a late-night radio talk show. It's Count Panic himself. Oh, hey there, Count Panic.
Oh, Bob, yes. Much like JTT, very popular, very popular.
I heard you had an article, like a spread in Vogue magazine. Is that correct?
There's a tell-all, yes, a tell-all spread. It told everything, Bob. Did you read it?
I heard about it. I know it's on newsstands now.
It is.
Newsstands still a thing in 2024.
Yeah, newsstands are still around, Bob.
Yeah, sure.
The news is still around, so there's always a newsstand somewhere. But, Bob, yes, it's on newsstands everywhere today.
Excellent. And
good luck trying to find it, I guess.
That's fair. It's Vogue. I would assume Vogue's really out there.
Big in the vampire community.
Yes. And joining me, my co-host. He's been doing it long enough with us. It's my brother, Steve Michaels, professional wrestling superstar, paranormal enthusiast, and pseudoscientist.
And a snazzy dresser.
You are wearing a T-shirt and jeans.
With my name on it. It has my name on it.
You're not even wearing jeans.
They can't see that.
Okay, that's fair.
Bob's not wearing pants, by the way.
I am wearing pants. I'm not about to show up to the show not wearing pants.
It's compressions.
Stop. All right, folks, we have a really incredible episode planned for you. Coming on the show in about 10 minutes or so, maybe 15, we have Professor John Harrison of Texas A&M University coming on. Professor Harrison is a professor of mathematics and not hypothetical, what's the proper term, Steve, for a physicist? Theoretical.
Well, I mean, there's multiple different kinds of physics.
Yes, but the theoretical.
There are theoretical physicists.
Yes, he's a theoretical physicist.
It's weird. You usually have a book or something in front of you.
Yeah, I also don't normally fall asleep before the show and wake up at like 8:15.
Welcome to the club, buddy.
I literally felt. You called me. You told me about the toy drive, and I was just like, yeah. And then the next thing I know, it was 8:15. I'm like, I have to go to work.
But we were coming. I was kind of on a slight.
Oh, trust all of us.
We all made it.
It is a weird week when Steve beats us all to the studio because that never happened.
He was here early.
It's true. I was excited. I was super excited about this episode. I got here. Bob rolled in his jalopy, and Panic just flew in as a bat, and then just
why
did
is
this
it
weird,
kinetically? I drive a jalopy.
To
go hunt monsters and study the paranormal.
To the viewers and the listeners, if you've ever seen the Muppet movie, and the vehicle...
That's a Studebaker.
Yeah, and it looks like a jalopy. It's parked right outside. We could take a field trip later if you want.
Moving right along.
We'll get a camera on it.
Anyway, so we'll get back to you in just a second. We got to get the Count Panic's weekend update first because the viewers will be angry.
Yeah, Bob, of course, the veil again is hardened up as we...
It gets thinned again around Yule, but we got time.
Soon. But, Bob... we just keep on going from one holiday to the next. A lot of preparation ahead of time. People seem like they're in that Christmas spirit, Bob. But I say, hey, wait. Townspeople celebrating this past weekend throughout the town. You got to pause it. You got to give your thanks. Then you could watch Jingle All the Way, Home Alone, Ernest Saves Christmas.
I was about to say you're forgetting the most important one. Ernest Scares.
But I had a good weekend, Bob.
That's good. Steve, what's been your update since last time I seen you?
Or
nothing.
Yeah. No, I mean it's been busy. As been busy wrestling.
I know. Look at this, guys. We have
still-
the World Championship belt here in front of us.
Still, the Rocket Pro Wrestling Heavyweight Champion went through a hellacious battle.
Hellacious. That's
if
a
I can
word.
say that on the radio. I don't think
I
we're gonna get
appreciate
fined
the
over
word
that.
hellacious.
It was a brutal street fight. But came out a little worse for the wear. But I'm still got my title, and that's all that matters.
We have a caller. It's only 9 o'clock.
It's a beautiful title, by the way, there, Steve. Yes, we do have a
Thank
caller.
you.
All right, caller, you're on the air.
Is this the Bob After Dark Butterball Turkey Hotline?
It is.
Oh,
God help you, because I am a vegetarian and I don't know how to cook one. But I'll tell you what, I will fake it. Steve.
I'm
Well,
cooking one on Thursday.
Well, listen, I am trying to cook. Want to know how long I should keep my bird in with? I'm going to stuff it with pierogies this year.
Oh, that's more of a Count Panic question.
Yeah. Well, I know a guy.
Okay, well,
I know a guy.
I can listen and listen for the answer. But hey, no, I just called to wish you guys nice to hear you again, Steve. Both of you guys in the count, a happy Thanksgiving,
Oh,
and
you too,
see your
John.
mom, Bob, from me. And so, what does Bob's Thanksgiving entail then?
Okay, so my tradition on Thanksgiving for the past 10 years is I wake up belligerently early in the morning and I go stand outside in the freezing cold and wait for other idiots in similar situations as me. AKA, the Windy City Ghostbusters every year goes marching in the downtown Chicago Thanksgiving Day Parade. And
Oh yeah. You know what? I that's right. You guys, and you know what? I watch that parade every year.
Yep, and so we're in the parade every year. We usually get really good TV time every year, but we stand around in the cold, and then me and Mom go out to eat at the Cracker Barrel.
Very, very nice. How about
Hey,
you, Steve? You have a couple a couple beers, a couple birds on the.
The couple of beers is absolutely correct. Don't let them lie to you, John.
I think anyone that knows me knows I don't drink. I am pure.
No. I'm sorry. No, I mean I meant to really say couple birds. So, what is your Thanksgiving? You're a big eater, I would assume.
You're a big eater, Steve, not a drinker, huh?
Yeah, I am a big eater. I've got a 13-pound turkey defrosting right now in the fridge at home. Gonna have the whole family over. It's gonna be a good time. I'm making mac and cheese, macaroni and cheese, which is one of my specialties. I'm making my homemade cranberry sauce.
And let me tell you guys, I've had this cranberry sauce before. It is the best cranberry sauce on the planet.
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
really good.
And that's from a vegetarian.
Yeah.
Hey, that sounds pretty good. Well, you know what? Whatever you guys have, enjoy it, and just call to wish you a happy Thanksgiving.
Oh,
again.
John,
So,
we appreciate
I
that.
will, I'll be interested to hear your guests coming up. So
Absolutely.
You guys take care. Have a
Thank
good
you.
evening.
Thanks,
Happy
John. We
Thanksgiving.
appreciate it.
Steve, I knew you didn't drink. I knew you were never a drinker.
Yeah, I'm not. I keep in order to keep this physique.
Oh, yeah,
I have to protect myself from all kinds of toxins.
I am, you know me. In fact, I had a beer on stream the other night.
You can do that.
Okay, so we're
There's
still...
a reason why he took a nap before the show.
I'm gonna make. We have
another caller?
No. We're good with the Zoom.
Let's touch base on something really, really fast.
Okay.
We are getting closer at this point because Bob After Dark is your weekly paranormal show where we talk about legends, lore, and the supernatural, things that go bump in the night, lights in the sky, weird cryptid stories, and of course Count Panic's favorite Thanksgiving side.
Oh man, you can't. I mean, a can of cranberry sauce, Bob. You can't beat a can of cranberry sauce.
The cranberry sauce.
It's gotta
a la
be in a
Bart.
can.
That is. What about you?
The cranberry sauce a la Bart.
Yes, yes. What about you?
It's good.
Me?
Yeah.
I like some collard greens.
Yes,
That's
yes, yes. That's good.
That's good. No, you have something to say about that, Bob?
No, I said good choice.
Okay. No, you gave me that look.
Yeah, like the I don't drink look. I'm still stuck on that.
I don't.
Would you guys like to know mine, or are we just gonna?
Yeah. What is
Okay.
it?
I guess, yeah.
The bread byproduct for the evening. whether it's a croissant or a biscuit or something.
Like a bread byproduct.
That's what I call them, but that's bread, but it's not like a loaf of bread.
I mean, it's still a
I don't want to hear
thing.
it.
It's like a byproduct would be like the yeast.
Yep,
you just spoonfuls of yeast.
Hey man, it's not Thanksgiving until you bust out the yeast and you just.
Bob's just sitting at the table with the Crisco can, just a big old ladle of Crisco.
This is a great show, by the way. So
it's the best start, honestly. We're nailing this tonight.
So normally how the show works is we have the weird spooky news of the week. That's where you, the fans, and me, the Bob, go scouring the internet for the news. There's only one news story this week that I think's worth at least mentioning. And by at least worth mentioning, I mean I could do an entire episode. At this point, my show could just switch over to this topic because we're just getting closer and closer to it being real. Steve, a TLDR, aliens are real.
Yes,
and they've been here a lot longer than we expected.
Yes,
and they're here.
They are from high up government sources.
Yeah,
they are here and they are real. And there's a lot.
Yes.
There's a lot to this.
Last week there was another meeting, and there was some leaked documents. What the leaked documents essentially are saying, and we don't know the validity behind it yet, but sources are saying it's true that aliens have been living underwater forever, and that's where things are coming from. And
so there was that, which we're not sure the validity of the source, but there is an official on the record, governmental record, on this hearing that is it's a 6-page document.
Yes.
And it was released by one of the congresswomen, the congresspeople. And it's essentially it's a multi-year internal investigation into the subject of UAPs, which is unidentified aerial phenomenon. Unidentified anomalous phenomenon. They keep changing what it means.
Yes.
They introduced some new terms in this, such as TUOs, technologies of unknown origin, and NHI, non-human intelligence.
Yeah, and they apparently have this tech already.
They have apparently had this tech since at least the 60s.
Yep, so Roswell is
very, reading between the lines, Roswell happened.
So, right now there's a lot of information. How much of it you can actually digest and, take in? It's interesting because the American people don't seem to care too much because there's a lot going on. But aliens are real. They've been here, and there's a potential that they're living underwater.
Well, and what's interesting about this official document, and I'm sure we can put this up on
of
page,
course, yep.
For you to comb through, because there is a lot of detail in this. They have basically categorized these UFOs or these UAPs into about 8 different categories. Everything from your traditional UFO that looks like the saucer,
yes,
to the triangle crafts, to boomerang-shaped crafts, to what they're calling irregular and organic crafts.
Yeah.
Which they... I'm going to read the description of this one specifically because it's so odd. So the description that they use for irregular and or organic objects says, irregularly shaped UAPs, those that defy simple geometric description, are among the rarest reported sightings. Shape-shifting UAPs also appear in the data set, typically having a spherical or disc-like base form, from which irregular geometries are seen to project. Floating brain or jellyfish UAPs are present as well, characterized by a central mass from which multiple arms or spars hang downward. Finally, combined shapes were also observed, including cubes within spheres, ringed saucers, and various rectangular and cuboid forms.
That is, there's a lot to process there. So we're essentially, there's a potential for a hive mind with a lot of arms. There's a potential for, like, jellyfish. It's a whole thing. And I know that I'm only touching on this because we have a guest, but I just wanted to let you guys know that this is out there, and I think it went a little too quiet that these documents were released.
Yeah, I mean, the way the news cycles work nowadays, I mean, things go in and out of them super fast, and when something like this drops, something bigger always happens,
of course,
that overshadows it. And really, that's what's happened with this news cycle. This is really some damning evidence.
Oh, that's nuts.
That has been very thoroughly and scientifically categorized, all the way down to how these objects individually behave, what atmospheric phenomena are associated with them,
right,
what physical ailments are seen with it. It's absolutely wild stuff.
Absolutely. We have a caller. Normally I wouldn't skim over these things, but we have a caller, and then we have our guest waiting on the horn. So what caller, you're on the air?
Good evening.
Oh. Steve,
How about this?
Count Dracula.
How are you, Count?
I am feeling so wonderful. I had a wonderful Halloween season, and now Thanksgiving is almost here, and Christmas and New Year's. Oh my goodness, this year has gone by so fast.
It really has. It has flown
Bob
by.
always doesn't know what to say. He's lost for words all the time.
I now have to specify which count now, because there's two counts on.
Well, this is the granddaddy right here.
Yeah. So Count Dracula. Can I just call you Dracula? Is that all right?
We've spoken before.
Okay. So Dracula. Since we're more familiar, this is bringing me so much joy to hear from you, because Bob is currently in tears in the studio because he hasn't heard from you in so long, and I'm so grateful to hear you.
Oh, I do, Steve.
Count Dracula, if I may. I have to have composure. I have a really important guest, but I can't.
I heard. And you're not wearing pants.
Wow.
No, he is not. He is not.
Count Dracula, can you spread some wisdom this evening? A quip.
I certainly can. Here's my story. Not only do I have a story, but I also have some tips for surviving Thanksgiving.
All right.
Oh, okay, all right. I meant he's been around for so long. He has seen the first Thanksgiving.
Way before that.
Yeah, no problem.
Anyway,
Yes, please.
here is my story. Late one night, a man takes a shortcut through a cemetery. When he heard tapping sounds, he became scared and quickened his pace. The tapping gets louder and louder, and he's scared out of his wits. Soon, he comes across a man chiseling a tombstone. "Thank goodness," he says to the chiseler. "You gave me the fright of my life. Why are you working so late?" The chiseler replied, "They spelled my name wrong."
So, Drac, let's get. I need to know how you're surviving Thanksgiving.
All right, surviving Thanksgiving.
You
Number one.
undercook the turkey.
Well, you don't want to do that, yes. But of course, that's obvious. All right, now, here is number one, surviving Thanksgiving. Number one, always defeather your turkey before cooking it. They become a bit of a fire hazard at 500 degrees. And really, it doesn't taste good as you think.
Do you know what? That's a good tip.
Number two, stuffing is crucial. Throw lots of sardines and jalapenos for a nice, exotic, rustic flavor. And number three, if you're shopping on Black Friday, don't enter a mall or shopping center without mace, brass knuckles, or some sort of a stabbing weapon.
That's actually good advice there.
I do have I guess it's more of a technical question for you, Dracula. Can you enter the mall without them inviting you?
Or is the sales ad considered the invite?
I order online.
Dracula, you have no idea.
That's what Cyber Monday is for.
That's it. No, that's a valid point. That's a valid point. You just get it straight to the castle.
Dracula, thank you for calling in, Drac.
Oh, it's good. Oh, I love you guys so much.
I'm going to speak for Bob. We love you too, Dracula. Thank you so much for calling in.
Thank you. Good evening.
Happy Thanksgiving to you, Dracula. Blah.
You as well.
Wow, how about that, Bob?
Okay, I need to...
Wow.
Today is just stacking up.
This is the greatest show we have ever done, and we haven't even gotten our guest on yet.
I know. Do we have another caller?
No.
Okay, yes, we have our guest. Yeah. Now, folks, we've had many a guest on the Bob After Dark verse over the years, and we've had some really cool guests. But I've never because we've had our friends from the Challenger Learning Center before.
Yeah.
But this is our first time with, like, college professor who teaches something that's not, like...
Yeah, no, yeah. This is look, we do have some really great guests on here, some really wonderful guests. We have taken it to the next level with this guest,
yes.
With all his accomplishments. So
yes.
I'm excited for this one.
Yes. Bob. So on the horn right now, calling us from the great state of Texas, we have Professor or Doctor. I believe it's Professor.
Yeah. He might be a doctor. We'll find out.
We're going to find out here in the moment what he prefers to go by. Folks, on the horn, we have Professor John Harrison of Texas A&M University, who is a theoretical physicist and a professor of mathematics.
Hello. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
And Professor, I don't think you could see them, but they could see you there on the Zoom. It makes sense later when you watch back the episode. But
yes,
just clarify that.
I wore a nice jacket. So.
You did. We see it.
And Professor, we appreciate you. Now, is Professor, Doctor John? What is the proper for us to call you? What do you want your students?
John is perfectly fine. Doctor, Professor, John, whatever. I'm perfectly fine with John.
Now, it's an interesting way how I found this guest, because usually how guests come to me is usually somebody will recommend, hey, I have this author friend. Count Panic will make a connection, like when we had Father Mike Maginot on the show when he was talking about the Gary Demon House exorcism. You would have never guessed in a million years how I found a professor of theoretical physics and mathematics.
How'd this one come about, Bob?
Ghostbusters.
It's always Ghostbusters.
It always comes back. I was on the one of the Ghostbuster forums on Halloween, and here's this nice dressed Ghostbuster man posting about him going to do a lecture about thermodynamics and ghosts, and I thought he was being silly. I was like, oh, it's just a Ghostbuster joke. Oh, no, this man's legitimately serious. And all these people were going on asking, and specifically me, can I go listen to this lecture? And our poor gentleman here said, no, I don't record them. And I'm like, well, that's a shame. We're going to have to get him on here to do this all over again. Now, John, before we get to who you are and all of your accomplishments, I just want to say thank you for taking time out of your incredibly busy schedule. I know midterms are coming up soon and all that jazz. So I just want to say thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come on and talk about what you do on a pseudoscience show, which is really amazing.
Yeah, well, no, thank you for having me. First of all, so it's a pleasure. I do. It's a scientist aside, I do enjoy, this topic. So it's a thrill for me. So thank you.
Absolutely. So can you tell us a little bit about who you are yourself, your background, what led you to the path you're on now, all that jazz, before we get into the meat and potatoes of the show here?
Sure, yeah. So I'm trained in theoretical physics. I have a bachelor's, master's, and PhD all in particle theory. My main research is in beyond standard model particles, so particles that we have not discovered yet. So I kind of, use the math and manipulate and try and see what particles could come out of that. I've been fascinated with, ghosts and horror and things like that my entire life. So it's I have to separate the scientist from the fan. But yes, I do. So I'm at Texas A&M in Corpus Christi, so I want to make that distinction because there is a Texas A&M in College Station. I'm at the one in Corpus Christi.
My apologies.
No. It's the same. It's all the same university system, but I'm at the.
It's like
one
Purdue,
in Corpus.
Bob. We went to the other
to
Purdue.
Purdue.
I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah, just so my university knows that I wasn't. But no, yeah. So I, every Halloween I like to just kind of change things up with my students, and I do a thermodynamics and paranormal lecture, and I find it fitting to dress as a Ghostbuster when I do so. I was born in '84, so grew up, with Ghostbusters, being a huge fan ever since I was a kid. So it's just been kind of one of those things that has stuck with me. So, yeah.
So why did you get into, some people go to school and they become a baker. Some people go to school and become a paranormal podcaster and talk show host. And some of us become professional wrestlers.
Yeah, that's a lot of years in college to become a professional wrestler.
You went to wrestling school. It's the same thing.
I did afterwards.
So
yes.
how does one land in theoretical physics and mathematics? That's a really interesting field, and I say that sincerely. How does one choose that as their field of study?
Well, I think it started early on. I was kind of always into the sciences and things like that. But as far as just you're a kid, so you just ask questions, why, things like that. And I think the why questions are more difficult to answer than a how question. And I think getting into that mindset where we try to figure out how as opposed to why, and that's the science in you. And so I kind of just flourished into that and realizing that, not to sound cliche, but mathematics is the language of the universe, and you can explain everything that we know using mathematics. And I kind of just found the beauty in that, and I wanted to ask those how questions. How did we get here? How is everything the way we are? Is this stuff we have no idea, and I want to kind of be on the forefront of working on these things. And I just I find it fascinating, and it's I try to have my mind blown at least once a day with something, and so far so good. So
what is your if I was to ask, because I know some people have very specific areas of field of study, in your realm, what is the most fascinating, or what is your main focus in your realm that you're this is what I would consider myself an expert in?
Particle theory. I mean, my main focus is neutrinos, which are a subatomic particle that, funnily enough, are nicknamed the ghost particle, mainly because they interact with very little to nothing within the universe. They can go through several thousand light years of lead before they even interact with anything. So it could, to detect them is very difficult. And then I look at what's called sterile neutrinos, which are and even different type that we haven't discovered yet, but speculation in math says that it could potentially exist. And that's kind of one of the things, but the overlying, I guess the thing that just keeps me going back for more is if you can think of everything that we know in the universe, the known universe, observe, taste, touch, smell, see, even with instruments, satellites, infrared, anything on the electromagnetic spectrum is only about 4% of the universe. So that means that we know only 4%. So there's 96% that we have no idea what it is, how to explain it. And that is what kind of keeps me motivated, is because we know as much as you think that we know, it's only 4% of the universe. And I find that fascinating.
I had no idea that was a statistic. You literally blew my mind. Did you know that?
Yeah. I mean, I think thermodynamics is not my field of expertise personally, but I took enough physics classes and have read enough books about quantum physics and things like that in my time that I understand a lot of
that.
This.
Is why you're here today.
But I think it's absolutely fascinating, and it's so wonderful for the world of the paranormal to have legitimate scientists, legitimate mathematicians, actually working on these things and taking it as serious as you and I do.
Yes.
So what made you decide to utilize your knowledge in thermodynamics and mathematics to try and look at some of these paranormal problems?
I try to combine as many interests that I have, and try to, just keep things, I'm think about being a student, that's kind of what it is I try to have something fun, throughout, especially I do it, and like I do it around midterms. So people are usually, kind of stressed out, and it's one of those lectures where they can just come in, have an open discussion like this, ask me anything. I try to have an open forum because I am interested in paranormal. I like I said, it's separating the science from the human. But I mean, my wife and I honeymooned, and we bought a book of the most haunted places in Texas, and we picked out a couple of those, and we stayed at those for our honeymoon. And that's kind of, the type of people that we are. That's just, yeah, it's just always been something that I've been fascinated with, and so it's, you have to kind of, because you do get in that area where, and thermodynamics does say that ghosts should not exist. And I preface my lecture in the classroom with should not. I don't say could not. I don't say cannot. I say should not. So thermodynamics says that they should not exist. So I try to keep personal beliefs personal.
Sure.
And so that's one thing I will never do is say physics or science says this cannot happen, because you can't prove a negative. So it's, if someone believes that their grandmother walks with them from the minute they wake up to the minute they go to sleep, I will never be the scientist that tells them no, she doesn't. That's just not who I am. And so I try to keep those two things separate. So I say this is what physics and the laws of thermodynamics says. This is, but we don't know. To talk about when you're mentioning a while ago about aliens living on Earth, I could do an entire lecture on how relativity and things like that say that that's probably not the case. But people's beliefs are people's beliefs. So can you prove a negative? Can you prove that fairies do not exist? Of course not. It's just kind of one of those things,
No, absolutely. I mean, I think for our audience, I don't think a lot of them are super familiar with, we keep talking about thermodynamics, and I don't think a lot of them may know generally even what that is, what that area of science is. Can you just very briefly just explain what thermodynamics is? And I know there's really 4 laws to it, but if you can give a brief explanation to our listeners, just so they understand kind of more what we're going to be discussing.
Absolutely. So the easiest way that you can think of it is essentially the most simplest form is heat transfer. It's the reason why your tea gets cold in the room. It's the reason why things in the universe continue to get worse. Okay, we call that entropy. It's the reason why how basically heat is transferred from one to another. We've all heard the term energy cannot be created or destroyed. This encompasses why that is. The 4 laws, as you said, the 4 laws of thermodynamics kind of encompass why energy cannot be created or destroyed, how heat must go from one system to another, and things like that. And so that's, I use those 4 laws to kind of show, hey, this is what physics says. This is why, full-bodied apparitions and the like should not take place or should not happen, things like that. But the easiest way to think of it is in terms of energy transfer.
So fascinating. So we're going to get to your lecture here in just one moment, because that's primarily why I stalked your page there for a moment, hoping I could find more out. And I'm glad we're connected now, because it's such a unique topic. Because usually when you speak to people in the high-end sciences, at least with my expertise, I've had them give me a very interesting look when I'm like, oh, I study pseudoscience. It's like, yeah, that's right. As they're like trying to walk away out of the conversation. I'm like, hold on, no, wait.
It closes a lot of doors.
It closes, but here you're legitimately putting some thought behind this and explaining why these things are the way they are. So the concept of the paranormal for you, let's go there and then we'll get to the lecture. Where does your fascination with the paranormal come from? Does it come from a purely scientific standpoint? Like, why do people feel these things that they are? Or is it, I genuinely, thoroughly enjoy the concept of the paranormal and I'm going to relate this to my work somehow?
Yeah, no, it's a combination of all of it. I mean, I think, humans are very, very cause and effect. I mean, you're laying in bed at night, you hear noise, what's causing it? And I think it's that. And I suppose you could say it's more of a psychological concept as opposed to a scientific one, but we always try to put some reasoning behind that. What's the bump in the night is more than likely your house moving and things like that. But of course, we think, is it a ghost? Things like that. So we try to go for Occam's razor at the point of the simplest answer is usually the most correct one. But I think ever since I was a kid, it's just been with me. I mean, like I said, I've grew up with. It was always the kid that liked the horror films and the comic books and things like that. I mean, no surprise, I became a scientist. I was always kind of into that type of thing. But I think, again, it's kind of like where people say being a physicist doesn't ruin action movies for you. And no, because you have to set that aside. I think with something like paranormal is the old adage is, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And I do believe that. But I also know that you can't, as I said a while ago, you can't prove something does not exist. I can show you why science and physics says that something should not take place, but I can't tell you definitively, I'm 100% sure, no such thing as ghosts, because nobody does know. And as I think being a proper scientist, you have to say at a point, the evidence is not there to support this claim. However, there's certainly not no evidence, if that makes sense.
Of course. Well, so what, in your case, this will be my last question before we get to lecture wise, is, what is evidence for you where you would draw the line saying, okay, I am not, because there's a lot of forms of evidence. Steve and I talk about it often on the show. You have spiritual photography, you have, your mediums and your et cetera, et cetera. At what point in a scientific world, in a straight, this is what I do, this is what I understand, what evidence would it take to tell you that would be something that is real? Like, at what point would it be, I need to physically capture ghost and show to you? Is it a full-blown video that you could prove that I didn't alter? Where does the line go for you for definitive proof?
I think for definitive proof, I think you'd have to test continuously, right? So something that's falsifiable. In other words, if you have, so let's go to mediums, for example. A medium could sit there and tell you, you do a cold reading and just, assume things and get everything right. But in a scientific setting, it's, if they are as they say they are, then they're going to be right. I would give them 99% of the time. I'll give them a margin of error at this point. But the fact is that most of the time they're not. And usually the time that you can generally say, okay, well, I could gather this, there's somebody, you were related to somebody that starts with a G. Does that ring any bells? And if someone raises their hand. Mediums I find less easy to believe and to put into, and I've had people talk to me and say, did you have this? Did you have this? And it's usually very, very cut and dry. Now that could be a different case for somebody else. And if again, this is going to, I find this, I don't, I'm trying to choose words carefully because I don't want to make anybody mad at this point.
You're not, I promise you're not.
No, I find sometimes a lot of the mediums to be like snake oil salesmen and just trying to get money off people that have lost, loved ones, and they're trying to hold on to something that some spark of hope. And I feel like a lot of times they're predatory and trying to get to that. So it's in a hypothesis setting with science, it's you want the test to be every time you do it to come out the same result. And so as a scientist, that's what we look for is does the result yield, do you yield the same results every time? And with mediums, the answer is, of course, no. And then, so what would convince me, I think, is something, we've all had paranormal experiences. I'm not going to, I would never lie to you and say I have never had a paranormal experience. I mean, you feel something walk past you, you feel somebody's watching you, you hear things. I was convinced when I was younger that my house was haunted, for example, because I would always hear footsteps up the stairs. I would hear my name being called. I would see things. So the question is, what does convince one person that something is is real. Because if you can see it with your eyes, there's always that back of your mind, was it real? Was something there? And I kind of wish I had that imagination where I could just say, yes, it was a ghost. I 100% believe it. But I think maybe part of it's fear. Maybe part of it is do you want to have that paranormal experience? And I don't know. But I think mediums, I think I can rule out, as I don't believe most of them. People's own paranormal experiences is harder to debate, because if you sit there and tell me, hey, I saw a ghost standing in my doorway, you can't refute that. I can't tell you no, you didn't. So it's just kind of one of those things. It's kind of proving the bigger picture, in the sense is I really find it hard to have something that you can prove, something like that.
And I think that's the fascinating thing about it is looking. While I do these investigations, I try and do them as scientifically as I possibly can in a very non-scientific field, right? So, the biggest thing that I tend to run into is, if you're looking at things purely scientifically, it's nothing that can ever truly be peer reviewed. It's nothing that, if I experience something on a location, there's no way that we can guarantee that we can recreate it, let alone in a controlled environment. So, that's why, this is a pseudoscience of what we do, because as much, even as hard as you try to do something scientifically in the field of paranormal investigation, it's by the very definition of science, you can never truly prove or disprove anything based on those qualifications.
Sure.
And that's exactly right. And I mean, you know better than I do as far as going out on location and having these experiences. And you can also, I mean, probably attest to the same thing, is that a lot of these ghost hunting shows really don't help the mindset of these things could be real, because especially the EVPs, for example, if you have to flash subtitles of what the EVP is saying, generally speaking, it's the old, what is it on the internet where you hear whatever you're reading.
It's basically a matrixing of audio.
Yes, and so it's of course you're going to hear what they're saying, and so I feel like they kind of they do this to kind of bait and hook you in, but it's the people that actually, because we have done, I spent quite a bit of money buying ghost hunting kits, because like I said, I mean, we were fascinated with this is what we did, and things like that, and so we've gotten some EVPs that I think could be considered, maybe it does say this, maybe it does say that, but you're absolutely right. You're not going to be able to prove that it's not, and I think I had one year I did a lecture on this at the university here, actually, and I live in Victoria, Texas. I drive to Corpus, but I did one at the university here, and after the lecture, this girl came up to me and she showed me a video that she filmed herself in a cemetery in Louisiana. And you could literally see this orb come straight up and then just go straight down. And generally speaking, I can usually say, okay, well, that's a bug or that's something. But this was so unique in the way it looked that I had I couldn't tell her, no, that's not what that was. And she swore to me up and down that it was not there when she was filming it. She was just filming the headstone because the date was old and she wanted to film it. She just happened to get this orb kind of hop up and down. And things like that are fascinating and unexplained. So, but I'm not a scientist to disprove any of this stuff. So I don't, I don't set out to debate religious people. I don't set out to debate, things like this. It's just one of those things that the science says what it says, and then, we can take it from there. But,
and I think that at the heart of really what science is, that's truly it. Is I don't think there's definitely scientists that go out to try and disprove theories and all that, but I think at the heart of it, at the core of what everyone wants, is to try and find out why things work, find out why things are happening the way that they are. And, you know, in the field of ghosts specifically, you know, that's a very hard ask. And, you know, like you touched on briefly, and we're going to go into a little bit deeper. You know, the laws of physics say something very specific, that these things shouldn't be happening. But the deeper you dive into some of the more theoretical aspects of physics, nothing is ever truly ruled out, because we're still learning so much more about with these newer particles that we're finding, and the way things are behaving on a quantum level. So you know, I just find it absolutely fascinating.
Oh, 100%. So let's talk a little bit about your lecture, because that's why I initially found you and accosted you to come on this thing. Sure. So there's a mass majority of my audience, and I'll be on the top of that list, is not. I did okay in my high school and college science classes, let me tell you. I did forensic science in college because I knew I wasn't going to pass much. So in a realm of thermodynamics and the paranormal and like the science behind ghosts, right? If you were to sum it up, you know, and you could take your time with it, whatever it might be, but what does science and the paranormal mean to you if I combine the two, like your lecture talks about?
Well, the first thing I do with my lectures, I talk about how thermodynamics and physics say ghosts shouldn't exist. So I do preface my talk by telling, you know, everybody I'm not trying to offend anybody. That's the first thing, is I'm trying to just, I don't make these rules of physics, right? They kind of they show us how they show us their face, and we kind of do our best to understand it. So that being said, we can take what we know from thermodynamics and just to quickly, like I summed up the laws a while ago, is the main focal point of my lecture is energy transfer. And I know people are going to go off on comments and saying, yeah, of course you're going to say energy transfer. But that's the heart of it, right? So, I mean, if you think of taking two types of energy, we have potential, and then once that starts moving, we have kinetic. So think of a ball on top of a hill, potential goes down, kinetic. Things start moving. The way I relate it is your hands. If you could hold two potential energies in your hands, bring them together, that would be kinetic, and then all of a sudden we clap. Okay, that's the sound. So that energy transfer, it has to go somewhere. Okay, so the hardest part is keeping that energy stable. So you can keep it into your potential in two hands, but the minute they start moving, that potential goes to zero. Once it starts moving, it's kinetic, but then that energy between them transfers out into sound. Think about heating up food or something like that in the microwave. The same thing takes place. You excite the electrons to the point that they emit heat, fall back down. That's what heats your food. That's what heats your tea. That's what does this. But it's that energy transfer that we focus on with this lecture. And so, and like I said, energy cannot be created or destroyed. It just goes somewhere else. And so I think what I try to convey in the lecture is full-bodied apparitions are less believable than orbs. And the reason why I say that is because for a full-bodied apparition to take place, and when I say full-bodied apparition, something that a human can look in their doorway and say, I see a person wearing 1800s Victorian frock coat, top hat, has a beard, pipe, things like this. For the human brain to recognize those features would require a substantial amount of energy just to stand there long enough for a human to comprehend what they're looking at. If a ghost were to bring themselves up in terms of a form, some form, you would notice a significant decrease in the energy level within your house, within your neighborhood, depending on how long the ghost wanted to stand there. That's why I feel like orbs are more believable. And generally, I'm a huge fan of old horror film. Vincent Price, things like that. And so the beauty of those was that they didn't have a lot of CGI. They didn't have a lot of graphics, things like that. So what they did was they made use of their environment. So they would kind of decrease the lights and then they would show a flash. That's what I would believe to happen. So that's why I feel like orbs would be a little bit more believable because that's what it is. It's just a flash of light. And so that energy can be explained relatively quickly because you would see some dim of light, you'd see a flash somewhere else, and then that goes away. But again, this is what thermodynamics says. So, entropy is a huge part of the problem as well. Unfortunately, I always tell my students, things in your life will get better. You're not the universe. Things in the universe are continuing to get worse. This is entropy, right? Things are getting further and further apart. We're getting, just everything is getting in disorder. Your cup of coffee, pour creamer into it. You're never going to get that creamer back out. Okay, that's kind of what entropy is. So this is what happens with your energy. But this is kind of just, I always say, don't blame me, blame thermodynamics. But, again, I mean, this is the main focal point is the energy transfer. As much as people try to argue that, it is what it is at this point.
So let's delve a little bit deeper onto that subject. So it's funny because in the paranormal world, it's the exact opposite belief, where it's orbs are less believable.
It depends on who you're. Me and Steve will tell you that's a bug,
right?
That's a lens flare.
But I think the fact that it's harder to like you were saying, it's harder for there to be this creation of a physical form as opposed to an orb, because again, I mean, and the nature, the mathematics of nature makes that a more likely form.
Yeah.
I mean, if you even look at like ball lightning and plasma balls and things like that, it's just like that. So, let's go a little bit deeper into the just discussing the how the laws of thermodynamics would explain these orbs, right? And how that would relate scientifically.
Yeah. What's the science behind the orb?
Yes.
Well, okay, I want to be clear because, like you said a while ago, generally speaking, you can explain away an orb. So if you have a video, yes, you can explain away an orb, light reflecting off dust, a bug, things like that. What I'm coming from is a thermodynamic standpoint.
Of
so
course.
what I'm saying is, I would believe, if someone were to tell me that they saw an orb, I would believe that over seeing a full-bodied apparition. And the reason why is because it would take less energy for a flash of light than it would for something to appear that's discernible to the human eye. So if you can recognize facial features, you can recognize what the person's wearing. That takes a bit of time. It may seem instantaneous for you to see something and recognize it, but according to your brain and the way light transfers, it takes a bit of time for you to actually recognize what's happening and what you're looking at. The amount of time that it takes would require a substantial amount of, quite a bit more energy than an orb would. So, and I always kind of, when I do this at the university, I usually say it would require, you would notice all the lights in this building dim in order for it to manifest itself for just that quick flash that you could recognize a person. Because it would take that amount of energy to actually withstand itself without being disintegrated into the universe. I always kind of say, we can be sure there's an afterlife because you have to go somewhere. So your energy is going to go back up into the universe. This is kind of the same thing. Is it would make more sense for a flash. I want to be clear with what I'm saying by make sense. I'm saying in the energy transfer standpoint, it makes more sense for a flash of light than it would for something for you to say, okay, that's my Uncle George, right? I mean, that's kind of one of those things that just strictly from this energy transfer standpoint, it would require so much more energy for there to be something that you could recognize as opposed to just a quick flash. So there really is no, I want to be clear, there really is no science behind an orb or science behind a full-bodied apparition, but it's kind of forgiving in one sense. Sure. It's harder to argue one versus the other, if that makes any sense.
No, it makes perfect sense.
You had mentioned that there was the amount of energy for a full body, theoretically, for a full-bodied apparition to appear would dim the lights in a building. In a lot of haunted locations, allegedly haunted locations, they find that there are electromagnetic field spikes in relation to it. in relation to paranormal activity. Could how in your opinion would electromagnetic energy affect a potential apparition?
When you say affect, do you mean allow it to take place?
Yes.
Yeah. So again, so when you're talking about these electrical spikes, I'm assuming from an electromagnetic field detector. I have to be careful because EMF is something completely different in physics. It's electromotive force, which actually allows.
Yes. Electromagnetic fields.
Yeah, electromagnetic field detector. So when you're talking about electrodynamics, unfortunately, the electric field is not easy, right? So it doesn't just go in one linear direction. It has manipulations. It goes up, it goes down, it fluctuates, and things like that. It's very, very hard to calculate an electric field just by using straight linear mathematics because it's not linear, right? So things change, things go up, things spike, things do it. So we expect there to be spikes in electric fields. Now, what you would notice, though, is that energy being depleted from something else. So an energy spike is common. And if you were to actually walk around with one of these electromagnetic field detectors, you would see spikes periodically throughout your house. Does that mean a ghost is standing there? Well, not necessarily. I'm not going to say no. Okay, I'm going to say not necessarily.
Right, absolutely.
So we'll just go with not. So not necessarily. Anytime you have any type of electric field, you expect to have some sort of spike at certain locations because it will jump up, it will go back down, falls up, falls down. This is just what the characteristic of electrodynamics. What you would expect, though, is that energy being taken from somewhere else. That's kind of what we're talking about. So imagine going to your refrigerator and feeling the side of it. You feel that heat on the side of it. Okay, that's that energy transfer that I'm talking about. So it has to, in order for it to maintain, to keep everything cool on the inside, there's this exothermic reaction taking place where sometimes, I mean, depending on, we live in South Texas. I have a refrigerator in my garage. For some, it gets extremely hot to where you can't even touch it just because of the amount of energy that it has to spend in order for it to keep everything cool on the inside. That is what I'm referring to when I'm talking about an energy transfer. So it would have to take energy from something else in order to use it, kind of robbing from the rich to give to the poor. This instance, right? So it would take energy from this grid, bring itself up in this place. So you would notice much more, I think, than just a spike on your field detector. You would notice an actual depletion of energy. And there's I think a town in I don't remember where it is, South Carolina or one of the Carolinas, where they boast about how the entire town is haunted. And continual hauntings are less easy to explain because it would almost be where they would have no electricity throughout the entire town just because of in order for this to take place, things to be moved. If you doors slamming, things like that requires a lot of energy transfer. So yeah, I mean, the energy field manipulation would be something that I would look at, but it would have to be quite substantial for it to be something that you would notice. If it spiked really, really far and then something, let's say, brushed up against you, then that would be, well, that's kind of harder to explain away and say, well, no, this is just the electric field spike, because you can't, to couple those is harder to argue.
Now, John, I got a question for you with these paranormal occurrences. A lot of times when you hear about a location being haunted, Steve can attest to this. Whenever I know of a location, one of the first things I do is I go and look at the location it's at in comparison to things around it that could be a conduit of energy, meaning power grid near it, like big long things of power lines. Is there a body of water nearby? Let's just strip away the scientific method for a moment. Would you argue that there's a correlation between all of these hauntings and something being around it that's got a lot of and I'm using energy in a scientific term, not in a magical, metaphysical term. Is there a correlation between a lot of that and the hauntings then? You would believe that. So if a haunting were to occur and it's near a house with a ton of power lines by it, would you say that would make total sense then in that regard?
It could, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it could, because the energy would have to be, again, taken from somewhere. So there'd have to be some decrease where there is an increase. So in order for this to go up, this has to go down. So yeah, I mean, if you notice a decrease in energy, or someone, people's all of a sudden their appliances aren't working or things like that, then you're seeing all these different flashes of light in one area. Yeah, it could absolutely, explain certain phenomena. Electric fields are interesting that way. I mean, we've all done the trick where you brush your hair with a comb and then you can move the water stream from your sink. That's is essentially electricity and magnetism have this really unique bond together where they almost act as a repelling force against these particles. And so, different things can cause different manipulations. It can cause attractive forces, it can cause repelling forces, and these are actual forces that you can feel. So, I mean, it's something that if you're living under power grids, for example, I'm not going to say that that's not going to have an effect on you, because but it sure as well could, Um, so yeah, I mean, I wouldn't see any type, and I want to be clear, I'm never going to argue against anything.
Of course.
So I would never say, no, 100% not. This would never be true. That's not what I do. I'm a scientist, so I want to look at evidence and I want to say, okay, well, so far this is the evidence that we have. This is the conclusion I can draw from that. But again, part of being a scientist is being humble. I mean, we're humble enough to say that we could potentially be wrong. There is 96% we don't know. That 96% could be something that we have yet to discover. If you're a subscriber to the string theory field of science, that assumes a 10 dimension of space and one of time. So you're talking 11 dimensions could be potentially built on top of each other. You could have things going in between interdimensionally. We don't know. There is all kinds of different things that could explain phenomena that we don't know, whether it's multi dimensions, many worlds, things like that. So I don't know. We don't know. Nobody knows. If anybody tells you yes, we know, they're lying to you.
I think that's an incredible answer, John, because it's, in my realm specifically, when I go and I have a conversation about this with more, legitimate hard science, and you tell them these things that I'm looking into and I'm researching, you get those looks. So I could really say I could appreciate somebody saying there's no real debate here because we don't know, and I could sincerely tell you that I appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. I have a couple of series of questions for you that I've cooked up as far as what Steve and I would consider evidence in the paranormal world. So I'm going to ask you a couple things about evidence, and I'm going to hear your opinion on them, because there was a question that somebody asked in one of the threads you were on, and the way you were able to answer that was so elegant. And I'm like, I wonder how you would react to other questions. So, question the first, because this is the one you answered. How would you react to a cold spot in a room or a microclimate in a room? In the sense of the paranormal world, some people say that a severe spike of cold in one section of the room compared to the rest might be paranormal. In the science world, how do you explain that?
So it's the same concept of taking energy from one place to another. I mentioned earlier about food or tea in a microwave. The way that things get heated up is that we have all these particles everywhere, and the electromagnetic waves go through the microwaves. It's not just a clever name for the machine, but these microwaves go through and they excite these electrons to the point to where they reach their maximum excitation level. They emit, generally speaking, radiation, whether it's light, heat, any type of some energy, and then fall back down to the ground state, and that's what in turn heats your food. You rub your hands together, you're doing the same type of thing. When we talk about temperature within a room, we're just simply talking about the speed limit of the particles within that space. So if the room is really cold, that means there's less energy in the system. If the room is hot, that means there's more energy. More in turn, it means that everything is moving really, really fast. Okay, the more energy you put into a system, the faster those particles are going to move. This is why your food heats up, right? Okay, this is what happens. If you were to feel a cold spot as something, let's say, were to touch you, this is akin to me saying a while ago the electromagnetic field detector spikes, and then you feel something touches you. That is an energy transfer. So that means that something would have to pull energy from somewhere. In this particular case, the particles moving around the room, in order to manifest enough to touch you. And this is not a visually discernible. So I want to be clear, because it's just something brushing up against you or something touching your hair or something like that, and you feel a cold spot. That is harder to argue against, because that would make sense from a thermodynamic standpoint, is that the energy is being taken from one place and utilized in another situation. So you would expect there to be a cold spot because the energy has been depleted from this one spot and taken somewhere else. This is what I was talking about. You would expect to see the lights dim. Same thing. The energy would be taken away from that little confined system that slows all those particles down and allows you to be touched or, what have you. So yeah, that's kind of the it's harder to say, well, no, that doesn't make any sense, because it would make sense in that, and it doesn't violate any laws of thermodynamics, I should say.
See, and I'm sorry.
No, go on. I love that. That's such a good answer.
And it's fascinating because I've even experienced at a point at an investigation, a cold spot in a location, immediately took a photo of that location, and in the photo was an orb. One of the most clearly defined orbs I've ever taken a photo of.
And here we go. We go back to the orbs. I love this.
So I mean, that makes sense.
Yep. John, my next one I wanted to ask you about is spiritual photography. All right. So you take a picture of something in a room where it might be potentially haunted, and then you get not an orb, but a figure, shadow, or some sort of wispy, apparition, as you will. How does one explain in a scientific term how something would be there on camera that wasn't there with the naked eye? How do we explain that?
So the wispy thing, I feel, would be as easy to explain as an orb would. And really what that is because you expect energy to transfer. So
sure.
Depending on the type of, I guess, camera that you're dealing with, and if it assumes it could take, because what is it? Camera essentially flashes light. That's energy transfer. Anytime you see light flash, that's a radiation, right? That's some energy being transferred. What it could essentially do is illuminate that section within that room, causing that energy to transfer to some other type of field. Now, the wispy bit would essentially be another transfer of energy. So you would assume this energy to just keep transferring over and over. So that you hit the flash, it transfers into whatever's there that uses that energy that was transferred from your flash. We try to think of get away from thinking of the camera as just a inanimate object, and I'm thinking focusing solely on the light that's
sure.
coming from it. So that's the energy being transferred from this system into the atmosphere with which you're sitting there. That apparition, or whatever you want to call it, is going to then utilize that radiation that's taking place, and then the wisp is just it transferring somewhere else. So I feel like a wisp would be harder to argue than a full-bodied apparition. Full-bodied apparition, I think, would use much more than the camera flash. You would notice much more. And this is, again, a familial face, right? Something that you can say, okay, I can see a human feature. I can see this. That takes time, again. So that would take much more energy than just a wisp. A wisp would be, you could explain that away by saying that's another type of energy transfer. So is it using, so it's, again, there's no violation of thermodynamics there. I feel like the full-bodied apparition may have a harder time with that, but sure. A wisp would make much more sense in that regard.
I love that. My last one about my evidence that I would bring to you is, again, we were talking about EVPs earlier. The science behind an EVP, or the science behind, well, I'm just going to use the term spirit as a lack of a better term. When we do EVPs, typically what it is we circulate through unused radio signal, and if something comes through that signal, it's something.
Oh, when you're doing like a spirit
box session, or
which I want to. I mean, that's different than an EVP.
No,
session.
no, I understand that, but when you're recording it, whatever it might be, an EVP.
So doing box.
Yep.
I just want to make this.
No, I know I messed up there. So spirit box session, we'll say that science behind. Spirit using unused radio signals to come through. Where's your stance on that?
Okay, so this may or may not blow mind again, but if you ever listen to the static between radio stations, the snowy buzz, we used to call it snow in between TV stations, that's radiation from the Big Bang. You can literally trace that radiation all the way back to the Big Bang.
No idea.
That
it's cool, right?
That static that you can hear is radiation. So radiation is a form of energy. So again, harder to argue because you're still having a transfer of energy. It's still using some form of energy. When we talk about you waking up in the middle of the night and just seeing somebody walk across your room without any other experience going on, without any your neighbor's losing signal, light, things like that. That's harder to explain than every example that you've brought me has been some form of energy transfer that could make sense. I'm not saying that they're ghosts.
No, of course not. Of course not.
What I'm saying is that you have not yet violated thermodynamics with any of these, because there is you've given me a parameter that involves energy, and so I could say, well, it could potentially use this particular energy. You have the temperature it's taken, you have the flash of light, which is radiation, and then now you have the static between radio signals being radiation as well. So yeah, I mean, that's still a use of radiation. It still allows for that energy transfer. So, and the sound waves, of course, my hand clap, that's sound transfer. It could manipulate the sound waves because that is a form of energy. So it could take energy from one place and transfer it to another. So yeah, again, these are why nobody has ever disproven an afterlife or, paranormal or things like that, because it is impossible to disprove these types of things. That's akin to, people say, are there aliens in the universe? I think, first of all, we would be ignorant to think that there's not, knowing how incredibly, I don't want to use the word infinite, but for all we know, it could potentially be infinite. The universe is. There very well could be. It's akin to getting a 5-gallon bucket of water from the ocean and saying there's no sharks in the ocean because there's none in this bucket. You've only looked in a certain area. So, proving a negative is impossible. And everything that you've given me with those 3 examples has been thermodynamics is perfectly okay in those regards.
Bet you didn't think I was.
I want to be clear. I'm not a thermodynamic spokesperson. It's just, these are the laws of physics that we have to apply. So
that's science, and there's like you said, there's certain parameters that you have to work through and work within, and all of these fall within those parameters.
I bet you didn't think that I was a thermodynamic expert today, Steve, did you?
You blew my mind, Bob.
There's very few times on the show that my mind gets blown while I'm here. Usually it's during the research portion, but Steve just witnessed my face just drop when you were like, oh no, the static's been around since Big Bang. I'm like, whoa, that's I had no idea that, and I work in radio. You would think I would. Did you know that, Count?
My mind is all over the place right now. Good stuff.
That's so fascinating. Now, Steve, we're getting a little late here, and I don't want to keep John up. He's a busy guy. Do you have any more questions for him?
No, I mean, it's been absolutely fascinating to hear you discuss these things, John, and I'm extremely grateful that you took the time out to come onto this show to discuss this, because I don't think that the scientific aspect of this is discussed enough.
No, it's not.
And the relation to physics and the relation to thermodynamics and how if you even trying to look at things as best as we can and as scientifically as I can on an investigation, that there's still these parameters from physics,
right?
That have to be followed.
Yes.
In order for these things to happen. So I'm just thrilled to have you on. This has truly been a joy for me to be a part of this show tonight.
So Steve comes on every once in a while, and I tell Steve every time, Steve can pick and choose what episodes he comes on for. When I told him I was having like a legitimate scientist from like a legitimate university, Steve's like, "Oh no, I'll be there." This was like the that would have been either on Halloween or November 1st when I saw your post. I was like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to get this guy on the show. And Steve's like, I'll be there for it.
I was like, I'll clear my schedule. I've always been a very science-minded person. Always loved studying science, and my bookcases at home are jam-packed with books on science and physics and astrophysics and things like that. So to be a part of this discussion has just been a true joy.
Now, John, usually when before I wrap things up, I always like to give our guest a chance to plug anything that might be going on. I don't know if you're actively doing research that somebody could do some looking up on, or if you have a book out or whatever it might be. Do you have anything you'd like to plug?
I just recently published a paper on particle physics. I mean, that's in science, that's kind of what we do. We publish papers and we let
Sure, of
people
course.
critique them. So no, that's really about it. I mean, we're doing, like I said, we kind of beyond the standard model particles. So we're just kind of looking for math and probabilities of these extra particles existing, trying to work our way through the universe, trying to explain, we don't even know what gravity is at this point still. So, we're trying to just kind of, is it a particle? Is it, so, no, I mean, just publish paper, just lecturing, doing the same old stuff. But
I wish we had so much more time, because I would love to delve into the particle physics aspect of things.
I'll tell you what, we can always bug John to come back on again, and so that way and I'll even just sit in the corner, and you could just have the full. It could be the Steve After Dark episode. I'll just hang out here.
Been asking for that for a long time.
I know that
Bob.
you can have it. I'll give it to you this one time. John, I just want to say thank you so much taking time out to come on my show.
Thank you.
You have no idea how fascinated I am. And it's whenever I do the paranormal, and I do a lot of like talks at libraries and stuff with kids, I always try to push the science and history aspect of the paranormal versus the oogity boogity side of things, even though that's where that's where my specialty lies in, is the oogity boogity side of.
That's where the money is.
That's where the money is. But I always try to tell kids, it's like, the paranormal is more than just ghosts. There's history to it. There's anthropology to it. There's actual science to it. And I always make Steve talk about the science aspect of things, even when we ghost bust. It's like, tell these kids how important it is to study these types of things. So, John, thank you I hope you enjoyed this as much as we did. I don't know how many paranormal talk shows you're on, but I hope we did you justice.
No, this was absolutely brilliant. I can't thank you enough for having me on. It was definitely a pleasure.
Absolutely. Count, do you have any words for John or questions? You were silent the entire time.
No, and I let you guys do your thing all the time. You know that. But, John, thank you so much for coming on. Yeah, we'll have to have him back here in the future.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Now,
anytime.
All right. I'll let Count handle that, and so we could do our goodbyes on our end because we're way past the
John,
time.
on the Zoom on our side here.
Yes. So, Steve, what's been going on in the realm of RPW wrestling? Let's go. You are about to be on a show with a certain meme.
Yeah.
An internet sensation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have to say his name for him to appear.
If you can get Joe Hendry on the show, I would.
Or a wrestling
he just
podcast
sticks his
now.
head out from behind him.
If Joe Hendry made
He's
an
been
appearance,
waiting.
Yeah, because from London to Paris to Tokyo, to Hammond, Indiana.
That's pretty cool.
Well, on the way to the show, I'll do the back route.
Yeah,
and just be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, bro, got lost."
Can you make Joe Hendry come out? Well, I'll bother you about that later. Talk about the Joe Hendry thing. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean, Joe Hendry's going to be at Rocket Pro Wrestling and whatever, but more importantly, the Rocket Pro Wrestling Heavyweight Champion will be there. I don't care about Joe Hendry.
If you say his name, he appears.
He can appear. I don't care.
It's kind of like Candyman,
He's no Steve Michaels. He's no Rocket Pro Wrestling Heavyweight Champion. That's all I'm saying.
From a wrestling standpoint, Steve put out an open challenge to anybody in the locker room. Joe Hendry is in that locker room that night, Steve.
He is, but
I know he's booked to work.
He's not working twice in one night. We don't.
You better be careful. He's kind of, like I said, he's like Candyman or any other. Joe Hendry is a cryptid.
We're an indie show. We're not paying him double.
I'm
going to get heat from that one from the bosses.
I'll edit that one. No, I'm not editing. Steve gets me so much crap on a normal basis, guys. But
no, look. So it's going to be a heck of a show. I'm issuing an open challenge to any wrestler around the world.
Don't point at me. I'm pointing at you, Cal Panic.
Any wrestler around the world to come in to challenge for my RPW Heavyweight Championship. I've held on to this thing since March. I have defended this. This is a true fact. I have defended my heavyweight championship more times than Cody Rhodes has.
Oh, there you
Oh,
go.
well, that's
So I am a better champion than Cody Rhodes.
So when Cody Rhodes comes out and wrestles you for your belt next week,
Not going to take it.
that's fair.
He's going under.
Unite the titles.
But what's more important
Yes.
is at that show, we briefly talked about the Windy City Ghostbusters.
Yes.
And this year, the Windy City Ghostbusters are doing, for the third year, we're doing our charity toy drive for the La Rabida Children's Hospital. This, all gimmicks with this aside,
Yes.
it's a cause very near and dear to my heart. I've had the opportunity to visit La Rabida multiple times. They're absolutely, it's amazing staff there. I've gotten to do room visits and visit the patients, meet the families. It's a very worthy cause, and we are the Windy City Ghostbusters put on the largest toy drive for La Rabida in the Chicago area. We are in 12 public-facing locations across the Chicagoland area. And at Rocket Pro Wrestling, we will be having a donation station where you can show up, donate a new unwrapped toy to this toy drive. Even if you don't want to stay for the show, if wrestling's not your thing, no judgment. You can still swing by at St. Joseph Park on Saturday, December 7th at 4 o'clock and donate to this toy drive. Anyone that donates, and we will also be collecting cash and digital donations as well. Anyone that donates a toy or monetarily to on that date will receive a raffle ticket. And I have worked very closely with Rocket Pro Wrestling staff and the Windy City Ghostbusters team. The winner of the raffle will get a wrestling prize package. It will feature Steve Michaels' shirt, personalized 8x10, buttons, stickers. It will also include a stack of photos, professional photos from past RPW events that will be signed by the RPW talent in the photos.
Oh, that's great.
It will also feature merchandise from some of the other wrestlers at the show. And the biggest thing that we're doing, I got this cleared with management. The winner of the raffle will get to, after the show, take a photo with me on the ramp at Rocket Pro Wrestling.
That's really nice.
Post-show. And it will be done professionally by our ringside photographer, so you get a nice digital photo of that moment. So please come on out. Again, Rocket Pro Wrestling, St. Joseph Park in Joliet, Illinois, 700 Theodore Street. Come on out, do some good, enjoy some wrestling, see Joe Hendry or whatever, and see Steve Michaels retain his RPW Heavyweight Championship.
Count Panic's going to challenge you for that.
Oh, Bob.
Bring it on,
wrestler.
Count.
I don't know, Steve, but Bob is retired, right? But he can come back.
I am retired. I'm not.
You got one more in you,
I got
Terry?
one more.
match.
One more, Terry.
One
Let me
more.
tell you, my back ain't
He's
feeling
not booked,
that.
though. He's not booked.
I'm barely even able to stand up in this stool. I got to sit in the stool the entire show. I got to stand up these days halfway through. This was a great episode, Steve. I wanted to thank you for coming on. And
It's a pleasure.
let me see if I could do this. Folks, did you know that you could follow Steve Michaels on all the social medias at Chicago Bear Hug pretty much across the board, including his newest venture on Blue Sky?
On Blue Sky, I have ventured away from Twitter.
X.
It's Twitter. It will always be Twitter. I will dead name that app to the end of time. It's Twitter, and I'm on Blue Sky.
Yep.
So join me where the skies are the bluest.
Bob After Dark is also on Blue Sky.
Bob After Dark is there.
It's at bobafterdark.com for me. We just got that sorted out.
Hey, how about that?
So, yeah, you can follow Steve Michaels on social media at Chicago Bear Hug pretty much across the board. You can go to ProWrestlingTees.com/Chicago Bear Hug for all of your Steve Michaels merchandise. And if you use discount code CountPanic15 at discount, you get 15% off on your order.
Yeah, I can make that one work.
If you literally make a Count Panic 15% off, speaking of, guys, the Bob After Dark merch store is getting revamped for the holidays. So
Just in time for the holidays.
Just in time for the holidays. I don't have a Black Friday sale going on, unfortunately, but starting next week, we're going to be working on, I'm going to be doing some whatever Bob After Dark stuff you guys need for your holiday season. You could book me on Bobbio. All you do is you reach out to me and say, hey, Bob, can you do a quick video message to my loved one or myself? And it'll cost you $5.
And he will say anything.
I will say most things for $5.
For $10, he will say anything. This man needs the money, so just drop him.
That hurts.
Just drop him the $10. Let him say something terrible about your family. He'll love it. I'll love it. It'll be great.
You could, if you paid me $10 to say something about your horrible family, I'll do that for you.
For $20, he will show up at your Thanksgiving dinner.
I'm busy on Thanksgiving, so maybe on Christmas. Me and Mom are going to Cracker Barrel on Thanksgiving.
That's true. Well, she'll understand. You'll be like, $20 is $20.
No, my mom would. You know, Mom, she ain't gonna put up with that. But Christmas, you can book me for your Christmas. I'm joking. Don't book me for your Christmas.
Book Bob for your Yule party.
You can book me for your Yule party. I'll come out and do tarot readings, the whole nine.
Speaking of Yule, I did that. We got to take a picture of Yule Cat.
So there is a Yule Cat photo shoot going on this Friday in Salem, Massachusetts, and a fan sent that in. A shout out to Josh from Pennsylvania. Yeah. He sent that in and he said, man, Count Panic would love this. And I said, if I would have known about this soon enough, and if they weren't doing it on Black Friday,
giant furry,
I would have made that pan out so hard to get you to go meet Yule Cat.
Could have met Yule Cat.
But guys, thank you for watching and listening to another episode of Bob After Dark. On behalf of me, Count Panic, and Steve, we just want to wish all of you guys good night and sweet dreams. And to my mom, good night. To Dad, wherever you are in the universe, I hope you're happy, comfortable doing whatever it is that you want to be doing. And to Tiff, no matter where you are in the world, I hope you have the sweetest dreams of them all. Good night, everybody. And remember, the two most important rules of Bob After Dark are not all who wander are lost, and as above, so below. Until next time.